Perhaps the best way for us to start this conversation, Claudia, is by asking you, who is Claudia Fernandez and why does your work matter?
Okay, I guess that we have different, I don't know, I can tell you maybe my academic, professional me, right? Maybe is the most interesting for people. So I am a language teacher. I have taught Spanish for a long time. And I began in Mexico. I'm from Mexico, originally in Mexico City. And I began my career as a teacher of English, as many people like to teach additional languages outside of the English-speaking countries. Usually, English is very demanding. So I started my career like that, doing that a long time ago, maybe, I don't know, 30 years ago, maybe. I know that I look young, but it's 30 years, more or less, every time that I think about that. So what happens is that I was interested in science when I was in high school, because usually you want to follow the steps of your favorite teachers. And I had a very good teacher in high school, a biology teacher, and I like the scientific part of that, of doing experiments and things like that. So I decided to study biology in Mexico City. When I graduated, I spent actually a gap year in Minnesota when I finished my high school. The high school in Mexico, I spent 1 year in Minnesota learning English. And I guess this, now that I think about it, being as an adult, I was 18, learning an English, in an additional language like English, immersed, because I was living with a family and I was going to school, and I spent 9 months doing that. I think now that was part of what influenced me to become a language teacher. But I didn't know that at the beginning, of course. My family thought that it was important for me to learn English, so they sent me in 1988 to Minnesota to the house of someone that had 2 kids, and I was taking care of the kids, and it was a life-changing experience, when you study abroad young. But I went back and I studied biology as I wanted, right? And I finished. But the thing is that at the end of my year, the last year of my major, I was very alone in the lab. I was doing things in the lab, and I thought that it was a lonely thing. I was spending 8 hours every day in a lab with rats. Now that I think about it, this sounds awful, but anyway, so I finished, and but in my mind, I said, if I want to study biology, I really want to teach biology, because I think that since I knew I wanted to become interested in education, not be part of education. I didn't know exactly what it was, if it was like a teacher in school or if in a higher education, but I wanted to be involved with education. Education was something that and I thought that it was something that it was easy for me to explain things or to be, I don't know, learning. It was fascinating. Anyway, so I studied biology. I finished in spite of being only. And then I had an aunt who was an English teacher. She passed away 2 years ago, unfortunately. But she said, you guys, she told me and her daughter that we are the same age. You guys are doing nothing in the summer. And I have this opportunity with the British Council, which is going to give us 1 month of language training for you to at least learn something about how to teach English. Is going to be good for you, etc. It was free for her, and so she put us there, right, my cousin, and I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved it was a month intensive language. I don't know exactly what type of training it was, but it was from the British Council. I remember that was a long time ago. I loved it. I love everything that I learned about how people learn languages, about all the different approaches. That was maybe the mid-90s, and I was maybe. So I say, you know what? I don't know if I want to be. That coincided with me feeling alone in the lab, right? So I said, maybe while I was 25 or 24, so maybe while I find my path, I'm going to start teaching English, which was in high demand. I knew already English because I had spent about a year in Minnesota. So the minute that I started doing that was it. I said, this is what I want to do. This is exactly what I wanted to do. And then say, I'm going to continue. I would like to learn more. One month of training is not going to be enough. I had the experience, but I knew that I was lacking, that I needed to learn more about it. So I took a 1-year course at the National University in Mexico to teach English and then to teach Spanish. So I was having these certificates here and there until I decided that I wanted to go abroad and study a master's degree in language. And then I learned Spanish. It's something that you can teach because in the U.S. there is a high demand, etc. So I said, I want to study in the master's degree in, I think it was language and literature at the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. And I went there because there was a guy that I liked. And so it was a double interest there. But then when I was doing my master's, which I loved, I was already older, like 28 or something. So I really felt that I was learning a lot about language, about Spanish languages. But and Fred Ekman, who I don't know if he's alive or not, but he was a fantastic person, a fantastic professor in second language acquisition. He taught me a lot of things. And one of the things that we used was Bill VanPatten's book in Making Communicative Language Teaching Happen. And when I finished that book, I said, this is my goal. So I want to study with him. I want to study with Bill, and I really want him to be my mentor in my PhD. So I was very lucky that the following, after I finished my master, he accepted me as one of his students. And I went to UIC exactly when I went to UIC because he was in UIC, because he had just moved from here. I don't know if you remember, he had told you that he was, for a long time, for many years, he was a professor in Urbana-Champaign, in the University of Chicago in Urbana-Champaign, which is the same system as UIC, but in Urbana. We are one of the sisters. And then I applied to study in Urbana-Champaign to work with him after he had accepted me. I was very lucky to do that, and I was very excited about it. And then he told me, I'm moving to Chicago, so you have to, if you want to work with me, you have to register, you have to do it. I said, yeah, that was, you told me, so it was a little bit stressful. But anyway, so I worked with him in Chicago, and he was my mentor,
the guide, coach.
And maybe that's, if you didn't know, maybe that's why the things that I'm going to tell you today, I think we have had this situation
Sounds
before.
Familiar. Okay.
So anyway, so so I did my PhD at UIC. I told him, I was very clear. I said, you know what, Bill, I really want to study my PhD, and I wanted to be with you because I want to be a language teacher. Mm-hmm. I want to know everything about language acquisition that I can learn, so it informs my practice, right? I had that clear since I was maybe 18 or something. And he said, so fantastic. That's because he loves teaching too, right? So I said, so that was my main goal. And then I was very lucky that I finished my PhD. I got a job at DePaul University here in Chicago. And DePaul University, of course, it is a middle-sized university. And my first job was mostly in teaching language, Spanish teaching language as a national language. And then after 7 years there, I moved to a liberal arts college in Galesburg, Illinois, Knox College, because my husband finished his PhD too, so we found jobs nearby in that area. So we moved there, and it was also my job was like a language teacher. So in all these, so I have been accumulating a lot of experience teaching Spanish. And I was learning. It's amazing that you can do a PhD in second language acquisition or anything, and you learning doesn't stop there. There are so many things that you need to learn along the way, and it has happened to me. And then the destiny is that I was doing okay in Knox College, teaching Spanish. It was a nice life there in a small town with my husband. And then the position at UIC opened, directing the Spanish language program. The same position that Bill VanPatten had when he was supervising me. It's amazing. It's just how destiny happens, right?
Following the footsteps.
Yes. I was not planning. I had tenured already. I was a tenured professor at Knox College. It was not in my plans to come back to Chicago or to UIC at all, right? But the position opened, and the description of that position had my name. I said, this is exactly what I wanted to do. And I can do that I knew that I can do that very well, and I knew how to do it, what to do to learn so I can do it better. I mean, and so I applied, and they offered the position. So we moved back to Chicago, say 8 years ago or something. It was funny because I had not set foot at UIC after I graduated, and going back 15 years later or something that is more or less what has shaped me, and I am an educator, a language teacher. I think it's the best thing that I know what to do, right? The things that I enjoy the most.
Yeah.
I am fascinated about how people learn and how people learn languages, and as you guys are, I'm sure. So that is a very nice way of putting your knowledge together. And the classroom, you observe, you learn, it's, as I said, I keep learning. Now in this newish job that I have directing the program, It's amazing because I have TAs, right? Language, like graduate TAs, like teachers, teacher assistants, who are doing the master's or the PhD, as I used to be.
Right.
And you can see yourself in them, how you started, the things that you believe, and how things have changed. I feel so privileged and so lucky to do what you love.
I'm here with John from My Speaking Score. And John, I think we agree that as entrepreneurs, one of the toughest things for us is to describe and articulate our business, what we do, why we do it, why we love it, who it helps, what problem it solves, in a super short, crystal clear way that's clear to the audience. So why don't you give us your 20-second pitch of who you help at My Speaking Score?
It's a great question. My Speaking Score is an AI-powered platform that predicts TOEFL speaking scores and gives our users feedback on how specifically to improve their TOEFL speaking performance so they can get a high score on test day.
Incredible. So if you're listening to this, you're a teacher, you help students with TOEFL, help them get their speaking score on TOEFL. Check out myspeakingscore.com. John would love to chat with you about how you can work together to help your students pass their speaking score on the TOEFL test. John, thank you for this.
Thanks, Andrew.
It's funny you said that you read that book, Making Language Communicative Again, which I think it's a classic book. I think it's out of print. I think a lot of BVP books, there's one from Input to Output as well. I think it's also a classic. But I wanted to ask you a question about that. What was it like to have Bill VanPatten as your supervisor, as your coach, as your mentor? And perhaps like the one lesson, or perhaps the most valuable thing you took from that period of time?
Oh, wow. I guess that he has had so many students. I guess each student has something different. He is a person that has had most influence in my career. Usually your advisor is, but mostly someone like BBP that is so knowledgeable and that has this talent of explaining difficult things in very comprehensible ways. It is amazing, that talent that he has. He's a great writer. So that was before that. When I was with him, that was in the 2000s. It was, I guess, before much of social media and things, before the age of anxiety or things like that. But so what happens is that, I really appreciated, he was a person that is with me that let me be very independent. He was not holding by my hand. He bought me all the equipment for my dissertation, and he didn't know much about this equipment. It was a newish thing that people do, a machine that's to measure trials to criterion. And I remember very well that the manual to use this computer machine, had three big books, right? So he got the machine, he got the manual, he told me, these are the manuals, read them and find out how this works, right? So he never sat with me, helping me what to make this work. It took me all my spring break, 10 days, I remember. I didn't want to be alone in the lab. I was alone in the lab, right? At least they were, but he was at least not with me, but he really take very good care of me, but he expected me to work by myself. And if I need help, I had the confidence of asking him. But I am telling you one thing, that I don't think there is a day in my life that when I work, I do not think about the many things that I learned from him, that I apply them. I don't think there is. I don't think everything that I do, see what is the influence and the stretch that he has had with me. Yes, I understand. I don't think he's my idol, and and I am not blind. Of course, he's a human being and everything. But his influence has been huge. On me and many other
influence. Leo, I think you agree, right? Like we've interviewed many people on this show, but when we interviewed him and it came out, I think, I haven't checked the stats, but like by far the comments we got, it's just his sphere of influence and how many people admire him is vast. People saying, this is great, oh my gosh, and then telling stories about meeting him at a conference or interacting with him, and the amount of stories we've heard from people after that episode was released. If Bill is listening, which I'm sure he's not, but if he is, like his influence, he doesn't
Yeah,
is
it's
incredible
amazing.
in our field. Yeah.
It's amazing. Yes. Yeah, totally.
And since we're talking about BVP and we're talking about the influence that he had on you, I think we should start by talking about communication or the communicative approach, because we know that many programs out there, many language programs claim to be communicative, but very few actually deliver a truly communicative program. And at the University of Illinois, Chicago, you direct a language program that is 100% task-based. And we are in a profession that is most of the time, if not always, limited by driven syllabi, exam preparation. And this is actually no small feat, Claudia. What were the core principles or the decisions that helped you and your team fully align the curriculum with a TBLT framework? In other words, what made this possible? What was the motivation to actually do this?
When I was in Knox College, I was starting more interested because, of course, the concept of tasks I learned from BVP. Of course, I knew he was the first person that that told me about tasks. But I was doing other things like things for my research, my dissertation. So as you go along in your career, of course, you have different interests. So I was finishing with the interest that promoted my dissertation, which was input processing. And I was doing how people notice things in the grammar and things like that. So I was trying to understand that better, was still interested. But then when I was in Knox College, I had to become better at facilitating language learning, Spanish learning. I started to become more interested in tasks, right? And then read Mike Long's book of second language acquisition and task-based language teaching, which is absolutely wonderful, right? And this is what makes sense. And I don't know maybe I had something that I cannot teach otherwise. Now that I know this, right? And I fully understand it, there's no way for me to do other things that if I want to have a communicative class, it's gotta be task-based. There's no other way. I cannot do it otherwise. So I started with a class in Knox College, piloting how can I do tasks in my class, and I thought that it was very successful. It was amazing with the other context from UIC. So I already knew that when I come to UIC, right, I'm gonna do a task-based curriculum. There's no other way.